Welcome back to the Ghosted Podcast. This is a topic today that we cannot talk about enough. And I know I say that about a lot of things, but this whole idea and duality between the masculine and feminine in dating, in life, is a huge topic. I know we did an episode, it was probably a little bit ago by now, episode, I think, 126, all about kind of tapping into your masculine as a man. We touched on feminine a little bit, but today I want to dive really, really deep into feminine energy, how to embody it. And this is not just an episode for the ladies. This is an episode that everyone can listen to. I think it will give good perspective for the guys as well, where some women are coming from when they're trying to tap in to their feminine energy more. Maybe there's things, guys, you can even do to help these ladies. So I have an amazing guest here with me to help offer some awesome insight. Dua Hanel is here, and she is a feminine energy and relationship coach who works with women of all ages looking to tune into, like we said, their feminine energy to transform their life. She delivers customized coaching, workshops, and events to help women in areas related to utilizing feminine energy to get what they want out of life, including becoming less stressed in business, more confident as a feminine woman, feeling more sexy. I mean, who doesn't want all these things? Finding the man of their dreams or fixing their current relationship, and much more. Thank you for being here.
Yeah, thank you for having me. I really appreciate it. What a wonderful introduction.
Whoa, how wonderful. I wonder who wrote that. So, obviously we know you are an expert on this topic, but do I tell listeners how you kind of arrived here and wanted to teach more women how to embody their feminine energy?
Yeah, absolutely. So I actually had okay, well, the focus is mainly on women who are in like more male dominated industries, like in career driven, like that kind of an atmosphere, because those are generally the women who are a little bit more in tune with their masculine energy as opposed to their feminine energy. So for me specifically, I had a company. It was doing very well. It was in the augmented and virtual reality arena.
Very
And
cool.
we helped companies with their like new innovative strategies for marketing. So we'd help them develop applications in order for them to market their products a little bit more, you know, exciting. And in this, when I had this company, it was just so stressful, to be completely honest with you. I was just constantly stressed. I felt like I was completely overworked. I was very much in tune with my masculine energy, and it got to the point where it was actually quite overwhelming, and it was affecting not only my health, but it was affecting my relationships, and not just my intimate relationships, but also like, relationships with my family members, relationships with my friends. And it was impacting my life so much in a negative way, to the point where I knew that I needed to decide, what I was going to do and what path I wanted to take. And I ended up having to walk away from that and
Mhm.
really recalibrate and really, focus on myself and healing myself holistically from that extended period of stress and running on very high levels of masculine energy for an extended period of time. So that's actually how I got into it. And I think it's pretty common for a number of people who are healers or, therapists or something. It's generally something they themselves have gone through. And it's just easier
Right.
to relate in that regards. Yeah.
And so how did that shift go for you? Was it smooth? Was it challenging? I'm guessing it wasn't just snap your fingers and we're done.
No, it definitely took some time. It was over the course of, it wasn't over a few weeks or anything like that. It took some time. And I think that the most important thing was focusing on myself holistically and realizing, what do I need to rebalance my stress levels. And a big part of that was, I was struggling with like hormonal imbalances. And it was affecting me in a number of different ways. Like there were, deficiencies. I wasn't eating the way that I should be eating. And it affects you in so many different ways that I think a lot of women don't actually even understand how it's affecting them. And the problem too is that you end up functioning in that realm for so long that you think it's normal. You think that these like, health issues that you have, or like the tension that you have in your muscles, you get to the point where you just think that it's normal.
Hmm.
But actually it's not. And there are plenty of ways to calibrate and reattune in your, the proper energy, as well as releasing that. And especially when you've been holding in so much tension for so long, when you do finally release it, it can be quite an experience. It could be very emotional as well.
Oh, sure.
Yeah.
And I'm sure the process of embracing your feminine energy too is like getting more in tune with those emotions. So I could see
Yeah.
that being a little more free flowing. And why does that work better for men and not women? You're saying these male dominated industries, are the guys struggling just as much? Or is it really, when women are trying to just be in their masculine energy all the time?
I I think, well, for men it's different just because we're biologically different, right? So
Mhm.
women in general have a whole load of hormones that we deal with on a regular basis, on a monthly basis, that men don't have that, and they don't experience that. So just in general, to say that, oh, it would be for men to be dealing with that level of stress. I mean, a long period of stress for anyone is obviously going to take a toll on their health. And I'm not saying that
Yeah.
it doesn't affect men. Of course it does. But for women, it's a little bit different. And, especially our hormones, our fertility, irregular periods, things like that. Right. And that's something that's going to affect you on every level. Um, so it's really just different. That's really all it boils down to, is it just being different. So I think that in terms of men in general, um, it can be something that is more, I don't know how to put this, like their ability to think a little bit more rationally, whereas women are generally more attuned to emotional thinking.
Hmm.
That also plays a role, right? So if you're in a, let's say you're in a, very career driven, very fast paced environment for your work, and you're constantly needing to think in a rational aspect when you're biologically programmed to think a little bit more emotional, that's where these imbalances come into play. Whereas men are programmed to think a little bit more rationally. So for them, it comes more natural.
Yeah, it's really so interesting to think about. And my TikTok picked up on the research I was doing before this episode because I was getting all
Yeah.
these videos of, different people talking about how, women wake up in the morning one way, like more slowly, whereas men are like, hey, let's go. I'm ready.
Yeah.
It was just kind of funny. It
Yeah.
was like, obviously, we know TikTok is listening to us, but it was just interesting.
Yeah.
It totally played on what you're saying of like the different hormones in our bodies, but yet we're all trying to fit kind of into the same mold.
Yeah, exactly. Well, and
Mhm.
I think that that's where society, honestly, I think that that's where society doesn't do women justice in that regard. Because I mean, I don't think that there's anything wrong with women being, high achievers. I don't think that there's anything wrong with women wanting to pursue, or, be a CEO or an entrepreneur or whatever it may be. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. But society has really promoted the idea of women tuning into their masculine in order to achieve that. Whereas those things are just as achievable in your feminine energy as well. So I think it's that maybe misunderstanding of how you can achieve, quote unquote success, whatever that is to you, in the proper arena of energy fields that are going to make you feel safe and calm and that are healthy for you.
So I guess give an example I think might be helpful for people listening. Like, what could be an example of success from the standpoint of feminine energy? Maybe rather the masculine energy. I mean, my mind goes to like being number one, being the best, working lots of hours. But you
Yeah.
tell me kind of examples of both. I think that'd be maybe some good perspective.
Yeah. So, okay. I can give you, I mean, would you prefer an example in like a career field, or are you talking about like relationships?
We could do both. I mean, because we are talking about relationships here, but I know we've been on the career path for a little bit. So let's do
Yes.
relationships. Why not?
Okay. So with relationships, I'll give you an example.
Yeah.
So with men generally, when a man is how do I say this? Let's say a man is frustrated with something, right? They're frustrated with a scenario or maybe a conversation or something like that. Generally, how they'll express their frustration is through anger, probably because they're a little less in tune with their emotions, right? Um, a woman who is in tune with her femininity is going to express her frustration through emotions, right? Either she's going to want to have a conversation about it. She's going to want to try to understand where you're coming from. She's going to want to potentially let out her emotions. Maybe she's going to be emotional and cry, right? That's usually like the feminine side of things.
Mm-hmm.
If the woman is more in tune with her masculine energy, she's going to want to match his energy, and she's going to then become a little bit more aggressive. So maybe she's going to start raising her voice. She's going to want to control the situation. She's going to want to have him listen to like her, adhere to her thinking in terms of what she thinks is the best as opposed to a compromise.
Mm-hmm.
And so when you're dealing with something like that, a lot of times you have a power struggle dynamic between the two. If the female is more in tune with her masculine energy, if she's in tune with her feminine energy more, and she's coming from more of a nurturing emotional angle, what tends to happen is that the masculine energy wants to protect that. So it's very common that the man is going to want to, it's biologically in men to want to protect and provide and all of that. So when he sees her breaking down and becoming emotional, he's going to want to protect her. And so that's where it's going to cause him to soften up a little bit as well. So instead of him being so aggressive, he's going to soften up. And then it's much easier to have a calmer conversation, and communication flows a bit easier when he's in his masculine, she's in her feminine, as opposed to if she's in her masculine and he's in his masculine, the conversation isn't going to flow very well because there is going to be that power dynamic struggle, and both of them are going to be in their aggressive, assertive, more controlling energy.
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
I think it totally makes sense to me. Hopefully does to our listeners too. If you have questions, send us a message. We'll get all the, you know where to send it to us, and we'll explain more. But I think, what's kind of interesting too is a lot of people are also curious, like, can I have a balance of both? Can my partner and I shift between, one person being more masculine and the other being more feminine, and then vice versa? Like, have you seen that work, or is that kind of tough to achieve?
Well, it's difficult to say that a person should be in one energy all the time,
Mm-hmm.
right? Because it's just not possible.
Right. That's the other thing I was
So,
hoping for
I
from
mean,
you.
well, we tend, obviously we have both energies inside of us, whether you're a man or a woman. And, there are going to be times, and that is very unique to the person specifically. There are going to be times where even if you are more feminine, based on a situation, you may then find yourself in a more masculine energy to deal with that situation. So for example, if you're a mother with your children and you're at the park and you see a dog coming after your child, obviously you're going to naturally kick into your masculine to protect your child, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know if that was the best example to give, but
No.
it's you naturally tune into what's necessary for survival, if that makes any sense.
Yeah.
And same with men. I mean, if, for example, as I can go off of the example that I gave earlier, if a man is having a conversation with his wife and he sees that she is, deeply upset about something, or maybe she's dealing with some sort of family trauma, a family member has passed away or something like that, he's going to naturally become more soft. He's going to naturally tune into his feminine side, which is focusing on emotions. How does she feel? How can I make her feel better?
Mm-hmm.
Right. So it's just natural for everyone to kind of utilize the appropriate energies for whatever situation it may be. But it's not possible to just be in like one energy all the time. And nor do I think that's healthy.
Exactly. Yeah, we all are many things, and we may have different energies in different situations, different relationships. So yeah, I just need to set you up for that answer for sure.
Yeah.
What about when it comes to same-sex relationships? Is it different in any way of navigating these energies?
Well, actually, most of the time you will find that individuals, regardless of what their sexual preference is, you'll find that people tend to have more of one.
Hmm.
So it doesn't matter, like I said, it doesn't matter if you're a man or a woman. It doesn't matter if you're, heterosexual or homosexual. None of that matters. Just as an individual person, generally, you'll either be more in tune with your feminine energy or you'll be more in tune with your masculine energy. So, of course, that is also applicable to, people who are in homosexual relationships, of course.
Totally. And, what about people who want to step more into their feminine? I think it is sometimes a struggle. Where can they begin? Obviously, reaching out to you is a great place.
Yeah.
But, where can they kind of begin to think through that? And what qualities should they, try to think about?
Yeah. So I think a very, very good first step is tuning in to, honestly, I think stress relief is a very good start. And I know that may sound a little strange, but de-stressing in terms of it allows you to feel grounded and it allows you to feel safe. And that's really
Mhm.
important in order to properly tune into your feminine energy, is for you to feel safe. So a lot of times stress and tension from stress is preventing people from feeling safe. And so like a really good way to start doing that is to find ways to regularly promote self-love. So whether that's going to be releasing tension through, having regular baths or massages or acupuncture, or releasing the tension in the muscles are going to help to release any built up energy blocks that may have been present for years or even decades, which is generally the reason why a woman is more in tune with her masculine.
Mhm.
So, prioritizing rest and peace, rest and relaxation, which means that, sometimes you have to learn to say no to that meeting, right? And you have to learn to reschedule, or reshift your day in order to have some free time, right? Or take a
Mhm.
nap, or, go out of your way to make tasks in your house easier to like lighten the load for yourself. So for example, um, maybe using like a crock pot, to cook your dinner over the day instead of spending hours in the evening cooking after you've already spent a full day working, right? So
Yeah.
that would be step one, is like focusing on de-stressing or doing what you can to start making life easier for yourself and more relaxed and release some of that tension. That's the first step.
Hmm.
And then once you've been able to start feeling a little bit more safe in terms of that, and you're working on, you know, releasing that tension and retuning back into like a softer energy, then there's a couple of different things that you can focus on. I mean, indulging in self-reflection is really, really important. And that can be in any regard. That in terms of your career, it could be something as simple as assessing how you dealt with a situation. Like, let's say you had, a conflict in the office. Instead of just automatically blaming the other person, taking some time to think about, well, what was your role in that situation, and how could you have done it differently? How could you have dealt with it a bit softer, right? So recognizing self-reflection, releasing control, being able to recognize when you're trying to control a situation that you don't necessarily have any control over, or you shouldn't necessarily have control over.
Hmm.
Accepting that you're able to release that control is a really big part of femininity, right? Again, these are all applicable in terms of if you feel safe, because if you don't
Yeah.
feel safe, then that's a completely different conversation, right? If you're in a relationship with somebody that you don't feel safe with, then tuning into your feminine energy is going to be difficult, because obviously you want to protect yourself. So I'm not talking about situations where you don't necessarily feel safe. I'm specifically talking about situations where you do feel safe and you're able to express that safety.
Hmm.
Um, Another example is, focusing on your emotions. A lot of women who are more in tune with their masculine tend to tend to ignore their emotions. They tend to try to pretend like they don't exist.
Hmm.
And that of course is much more of a masculine trait, right? So trying to recognize how you feel about something, and not only how you feel about it, but if you want to express a certain emotion, then go ahead and express it. If you want to cry about it, allow yourself to cry about it.
Yeah.
So being a little bit more in tune with your emotions as well. And then probably, I don't know. I mean, there's honestly, I could just go on.
I love it.
I
These
could
are
go
all
on and
great
on and
things.
on. Yeah.
Well, maybe a good place to start so we don't bombard people with too much. Um,
Yeah.
and what about, because I do get a lot of women where, during the workday, they're like, okay, I'm running my business. I feel like I can't really I have to be in my masculine to run my
Yeah.
business and do my thing. Then making that shift is really hard when it comes to going on the date. Like, I'll even make sure that I plan a date for them that's on the weekend so they're not in work
Yeah.
mode. Um,
Yes.
but, what other things could, women who are kicking ass in their careers, kind of do? I know a lot of things you mentioned probably, but are there other things, even as a matchmaker, when I'm thinking about dates that I could think about besides weekend dates only?
Um, Dates to help them get into their feminine,
Yeah,
or
I know.
what do you mean?
I'm kind of putting you on the spot here.
Um, I think well, I mean, I think that's preferential to, whatever the woman prefers, honestly. But I
Yeah.
do think that when it comes to dating in general, I think that especially women who are in their masculine, they tend to close off from being receptive and receiving. And so that's something that is really going to affect their, dating. And the
Yeah.
reason why is because a lot of times women who are more in their masculine, they're not so open to being receptive. So that can come in many different forms. One example of that is receiving a compliment, right? If somebody gives you a compliment and you aren't so accepting of it, like, oh yeah, no big deal, and you just kind of brush it off, that can also be a sign of, being a little bit more in tune with the masculine, because you're not receiving
Mm.
these compliments. So I think that that's something that's really important in general when you are somebody who is in the dating pool right now and you are going on regular dates and you're meeting people and you're looking for somebody, is to think about, like, as a woman in your feminine, receiving, being open to receptivity is extremely important. So,
Mhm.
if he's offering to pay, that shouldn't be something that you take as an insult.
Right.
I'm sure he's very capable of, or he knows that you're very capable of paying for the meal. It's not supposed to be taken insulting by any means. It's simply just him trying to give you a gift, for lack of a better word, to give you something. And as in your feminine energy, being open to receiving that is extremely important.
Right. And hey, you can still do your offer and say, oh, no, let's split it, but then just let him pay. Okay.
Yeah. I had a friend, and she had just like recently broken up with her long time relationship, and then she was like just starting to date again, right? And she was about to go on her first date. She had like lined up a couple of dates throughout the weekend and
Yeah.
the next weekend. She was about to go on her date, and we were having a call, and she was like, "Oh, what should I wear?" So we were like FaceTiming. And then I was like, okay, no matter what no matter what, let him pay. Like, honestly, I said it kind of joking, but I was also expecting her to be like, oh yeah, like, of course, I would expect him to pay.
Hmm.
And surprisingly enough, she actually was like, why would I let him pay? Like, no, we can split it. And I thought that that was so interesting, because I think that that's a very common mindset among women who are a little bit more in tune with their masculine, is, no, I can provide for myself. I can take care of myself. I don't want him thinking I can't afford things, right? And it's
Hmm.
like, but it has nothing to do with any of that. It has
Right.
nothing to do with whether he thinks you can't afford it. Like, where did that even come from? It's not about that. It's about, he invited you out to dinner. He wants to, he wants to give you a gift in terms of saying, thank you for your time, thank you for spending time with me, and just receive that. Just be open to receiving it. It has nothing to do with him trying to insult you in any way, shape, or form. So I thought that that was really interesting, because then after having that conversation with her, it actually was something that came up a few more times with some of my other friends that were saying,
Oh,
oh,
yeah.
no, no, it's not a big deal, we'll just split it. Yeah, I thought that that was interesting, but that's just my perspective on that.
Hey, no, I am completely in agreement with you on any date I set up. I'm like, I tell the women too, I'm like, the guy is gonna pay. I just want you to know that.
Yeah.
That's the standard,
Yeah.
and he can pay. And
Yeah,
I'm like, if you're
exactly.
really
He should.
offended by that, like, let me know because I can make sure he
Yeah.
doesn't. But, you even
Yeah.
think about, like, let's say you go, maybe you're just going on a coffee date, and you each pay for your own coffee. That feels like a business meeting, you know? Or even a
Yeah.
business meeting, I'd still
Yeah.
pay for someone else's coffee. So it like
Yeah,
also
it's
just kind of
true.
adds to the date element that,
Well, and it
freaks me
also
out.
it also is, you're also taking away, like, the same way that women are naturally more nurturing than men are, right? We're naturally more emotional than men are. These are biological things in us, right? This is how we were, how our DNA allows us to function and
Mhm.
interact with the world around us. With men, it's like a part of them, of who they are, of how they're programmed for survival purposes, is to protect and to provide, right? So now
Mhm.
you're taking away his ability to show you that he's a capable provider. So, and I know that
Yeah.
that may sound weird, but a lot of this stuff is still biologically in us, and it's still in that way of thinking from, original, like the original creation of, forever ago, where it's like, this is what we look for in a mate because of biological reasons, right? And so
Mhm.
he wants to be able to showcase to a woman that he's interested in that he's able to provide for her. So if you're stripping him of that, then it's also not a good feeling for him.
Oh, for sure. And I even notice too when I am, interviewing men and women and asking them what they're looking for, I notice themes. Like the guys will say things that they're looking for that are very much the more feminine energy traits, like nurturing,
Yes.
supportive, or they'll even be like,
Yes.
"Oh, if she's a nurse, that's awesome." And I'm like, "Okay,
Yes.
I know what you're getting at here. It's not really that she's a nurse, but it's about those like that is a job that
She
has
can
a lot
take
of
care.
feminine qualities?"
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And it's interesting because and I don't know at what point, I'm not, I mean, with all of the work that I've done, what I've noticed is that women who are in their 30s or older tend to understand that, and they tend to have, probably because of their experiences with previous relationships,
Yeah.
they tend to really understand that, okay, I do understand that maybe, a man wants a woman who, is potentially nurturing, to take care of the children, to take care of him. It just makes more sense to them. But what I've also noticed is that when for me personally, I don't know what your experience has been, but when I'm dealing with younger women, or having conversation with younger women, they tend to have a very different understanding of that, which is interesting. And they'll
Mhm.
think that what a man wants is a woman with more masculine traits, which I find very interesting. And I'm curious to know how that even, like, how society has kind of pushed that ideology for younger women to think that feminine qualities are not necessarily what men are looking for.
Right. I know. I do. I kind of wonder that too, because I notice like now that I have some people that are working with me that are actually in Gen Z, there are a
Yeah.
lot of differences between like the millennials and the Gen Xers that I'm matchmaking that I definitely notice kind of like what
Yes.
you're saying or
Yeah.
even just like with people's sexual orientations. I think
Yeah.
more often than not, I'll have someone who's like, I like everybody, or I'm bisexual or fluid or in that way. So I wonder if that's almost part of it too. But I do wonder
Mm.
how relationships will pan out because, like you said, you still kind of got to have that duality and balance of both energies.
Yeah. I mean, for me, I haven't, because it's like opposites attract, right?
Yeah.
So where you have somebody who is the provider, the one who's a little bit more hard, or maybe they think a little bit more rationally, in order to balance that out, the other person is generally whether it's a man or female, the other
Hmm.
person is generally going to be more nurturing or soft or emotional or whatever that may be. And generally it's opposites attract that is what makes relationships successful in the long
Yeah.
term. But when you take a look at relationships where both are very much in their masculine, or even both are very much in their feminine, it's almost like the opposite is missing. And when the opposite is missing, what I tend to see in the work that I do is that those relationships don't last very long.
Hmm. I literally saw this play out before my very eyes yesterday.
Oh, yeah.
I was catching up with a client. He'd been in a relationship for a few months. I was like, okay, tell me what happened. It didn't work out. And he was like, he's like, we're always butting heads. It was just like this. I would say one thing
Yeah.
and then she would be like, no, 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 this thing. And I was like, you know what I'm going to say? Because I've kind of given him
Yeah.
my whole spiel on masculine versus feminine. And he's like, yeah. And he said there wasn't actually as much of that attraction that he wanted because they were too alike. He's like, we were
Yeah.
both almost too the same. And he's like, there was no way that I could get into my feminine energy. It just was too unnatural for me.
Right. Right. Well, and it is quite, I think that in general it's unnatural, right? Because even as a woman, when you're in your masculine, that's also not necessarily natural to be in your masculine,
Hmm.
like the majority of the time is not a natural thing. And
Yeah.
when I personally was going through that, it was something I really, really struggled with because I didn't feel like I was being myself. I didn't feel like it was natural for me. I didn't feel safe in that kind of way of thinking or that masculine energy for a long period of time. I didn't feel safe in it. And so I think that that's the other thing too, is for women who are predominantly in their male or their masculine energy, that's a question you have to ask yourself. I mean, how do you feel? Do you feel like, do you feel overwhelmed? Do you feel burnt out? Do you feel comfortable? I mean, like,
Hmm.
you have to ask yourself these questions.
So let's say someone's listening right now. They're like, okay, I'm overwhelmed. I'm uncomfortable. You know, I need, I need to do more to get in touch with my feminine energy. Dua, how can people reach out to you, connect, follow you, get in touch? Give us all the ways that they can up their feminine energy.
Yeah, absolutely. So I mean, the best way to reach out to me is probably through LinkedIn. That's honestly probably the best way to get hold of me. And I'm on
Hmm.
LinkedIn. You can find me. My name on there is Maya Dua Hanel. So you can find me on there. I also have a website, which is called femininefoundation.com. And that kind of highlights the services that I offer. I do have a feminine energy transformational event that's taking place coming up in Mexico City. It's going to be in October. That's also information for that is also on the website. And that's going to be focusing on helping women to understand the differences between masculine and feminine energy and how to tap into their divine feminine. But it also is going to have components of various other feminine arenas. So, for example, fashion and style, how to present yourself feminine on the outside. And it's also going to have a component of relationships and, tuning into your sensuality to be able to make your relationship a lot stronger with your partner. And yeah, and then there's like a networking component associated with that as well. So if you're interested in that event or learning more about that event, that's also on the website, which is femininefoundation.com. And yeah, I mean, I don't know if you like have those links that you're going to drop somewhere or anything like that. I
We'll
don't
put
know,
them in the
but
show notes. People can easily just copy paste, click, head on over. And
yeah.
I mean, I might even be involved with this little shindig in October. I know we're going to
Yeah,
figure
I
that
know.
out.
I would love for you to. Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I would absolutely love
I
that.
can't believe I just said shindig, but kind of felt right. So, and what about any other parting final words of wisdom? I know we touched on a lot, but maybe there's some extra things you might want to let our single listeners know before we leave.
Yeah, I think a lot of women are I think for a lot of women that have been functioning in their masculine for an extended period of time, And a lot of times this is tied in with some sort of trauma. And I hate to say that, but it could be a childhood trauma that you've experienced that made you feel unsafe, which, then caused you to then tune in more to your masculine energy. Or it could be that you're a single mother, right? And you have to do everything by yourself. So you have no other option but to have masculine energy as well in order to raise your child, and take care of your child and provide for your child. So, I mean, there could be a number of reasons why you have tuned into your masculine. But for a lot of women, they are it's such a foreign idea
Mhm.
to find their femininity again and find their feminine energy again, that it's almost like, maybe they're open to the idea or the thought of it is nice, but they're just a little nervous.
Yeah.
And they're a little scared. And even, let's say, for example, you're a single woman and you are getting back into the dating scene, and you've been functioning in your masculine energy for so long that you're a little nervous to go into dating somebody and immediately being receptive and immediately allowing them to lead, or immediately being in your feminine energy, because you don't know them. And of course that's completely understandable, but it's important to take the time to think about what it is that you want in your life, in yourself, and in your partner. Because if you want your partner to be predominantly in his male energy and you want to be the receiver, you want him to be in control, you want him to be more dominant, then there are changes that would need to be made if you're a woman who's predominantly in her masculine energy but wants to be in her feminine energy, right?
Right.
So it's really taking the time to think about what you want. I think a
Mhm.
lot of women don't think about that. So it's thinking about what you want. What do you truly want? Do you truly want, what's your ideal relationship? Okay, my ideal relationship is that I feel safe, that he makes me feel safe, that I can go to him for anything, that, he's going to be in charge of, like the burly man things. I don't have to worry about anything. I mean, these are all like, that means you would like to be more in tune with your feminine energy. And if that's the case, in order for you to find a man who's going to be the things that you want, you have to realign yourself to what you want first, right?
Mhm.
And so that's really, really important when it comes to the dating game.
Ooh, I love it. I feel like we could start a whole new episode now with that. So hopefully people listen to
Yeah.
the end because that was very important. And Dua, thank you
Yeah.
so much for coming on the podcast. Hopefully people
Yeah.
will
Thank
reach
you for having
out
me.
with the links
Yeah,
below.
absolutely.
And I know well, when this comes out, we'll both probably be on maternity leave. So if you reach out to either of us and we don't respond, don't take it personally.
Yeah, exactly. But thank you so much for having me. I really, really appreciate it. Obviously, if anyone's interested in learning more about feminine energy in general, I do offer like one-to-one coaching as well as workshop classes. I've got some different groups that you can join, like Facebook groups. And I'll send you over all of the links for you to be able to post that. And yeah, thank you so much for having me.
Awesome. Thanks again.